I'm back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money, and you can listen to this podcast again. We archive all of our programs at richdadradio.com. I suggest you listen to this one again, especially this program. I don't know what's going to happen. I have some suspicions, but I can tell you something. Tomorrow is not going to be like yesterday. And I'm afraid many, many people are kind of hoping that things will change. So once again, thank Matt Kirchhoff and Jerry Robinson for their insights. And we're going to the first question now to Ask Robert. You can submit your question to Ask Robert at richdadradio.com. Melissa, what's the first question?
Our first question today comes from Craig in Calgary, Alberta. Favorite book, Unfair Advantage. His question is this. There is always some greedy reason for government policy. What are your thoughts on TPP? Are there any benefits for the average person, or am I right in thinking that we are about to get screwed again?
Well, there's always two sides. There's always three sides to everything, as you know. TPP, in my opinion, and I could be wrong.
And what is TPP?
Oh, Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's a trade agreement between friends and foe, not against the foe. I suspect it's against China and North Korea and those. I suspect. I could be wrong, but I don't trust my government. They're all joining sides and, fighting for deck chairs on the Titanic right now. The point to remember is this, which we talked about briefly, is in 1944 was the Bretton Woods Agreement that made the U.S. dollar as good as gold. It also created the IMF and the World Bank. There's always three sides to a coin, heads, tails, and the edge. On the other side of the coin going against the IMF and the World Bank is BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Those guys don't like the deal they're getting, so they formed a BRICS bank. And they want to go against the IMF and the World Bank. And I think TPP is more about that. So Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are getting the short end of the stick, so they're going to form their own bank. But this goes back to the whole story that it all goes back to oil. Oil, I think, is a dying commodity. I think solar will take over and alternatives will take over. But for now, there's going to be hell to pay. So the question is, what is TPP? I think is another time to secure a deck chair on the Titanic before it goes down. Any comments, Kim?
Well, I just, the thing that just jumped out at me, you're talking about government policy, and there's so much we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And I got to say again that the eye-opener for me in this show was that in 1973, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia cut a deal saying that all Saudi oil would be bought, purchased in U.S. dollars, and in exchange, the U.S. was going to supply weapons and protection of Saudi oil fields from neighboring nations. And then all of OPEC agreed to do this.
Yeah, because they were afraid of Israel, because Israel will come in and take their oil. That's what they're afraid of. So Israel, if you think the U.S. is a friend of Israel, I think you better think again. That's why Obama snubbing Netanyahu last year and just recently going over to Saudi Arabia to kiss the ring. I think that's action speaks louder than words. Think for yourself right now.
Think for yourself.
Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Alexander in Germany. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says, I'm going to start my education in entrepreneurship to start my own business abroad, but I have to borrow money to take this step. Is it worth doing? My intuition is telling me this is a good decision.
Well, it's not the money you spend. The question is, do you use your education? And as you can tell, Matt Kirchhoff is a really good friend of mine. But he went to traditional business school, and what they teach them is ancient history about markets. They have most guys that go to business school, their feet aren't on the ground. They live someplace in the air. There's Jared Robinson, when he talks about investing, he talks about things that come from the soil, products and, oil, stuff like this. So there's always different philosophies. The most important thing is, will you use your education? That's the question. If you use it, it's worth it. And by the way, Rich Dad does have programs for people who want to be entrepreneurs, and we have a whole online programs for people who do not want to be employees, working for a living, saving money, getting out of debt, and investing for the long term in the stock market. So Rich Dad also has programs. A lot of people have programs. Take your pick. But the most important thing is the reason most people don't use their education is because they teach you in school not to make mistakes. Do you know how stupid that is? You have any idea how stupid that is? How are you going to learn anything if you don't make mistakes. In school, the person that makes the most mistakes is stupid. In the real world, the person that makes most mistakes and learn from them is called successful. Comments, Kim?
Well, Alexander says he's going to borrow money to take this step. My question is, what are you borrowing the money for? That's all. What are you borrowing the money? You're saying if it's traditional school, waste of time if you want to learn entrepreneurship, because I still to this day don't know any school that teaches anything about entrepreneurship, because the way you learn entrepreneurship is two ways. You go out there and you do it and you start, and you and I, Robert, have started many companies with no money at all, or you find a mentor who's doing what you want to do and you go study with them.
Yeah.
And ideally for free and learn from them. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. That's the question is really up to you, but congratulations for thinking about
Yeah.
it. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Bren in Australia. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We can see governments around the world trying to manipulate the markets by policies, like printing monies and bailout. Do you think they can keep on using these tactics to save our world economies?
Well, that's the whole point of this program. Again, 1944, let me give you the dates because I'm a history buff. I know Matt Kirchhoff disagrees with all this, but in 1944, it's the Bretton Woods Agreement. 44 nations got together and they said, hey, let's pass the torch to America. See, before 1944, the reserve currency of the world was England. They had the control of it, so they passed it to the Fed here in America. Now, Matt disagrees with all that, but that's what happened. And so the dollar was supposed to be backed by gold. And since America had just fought the war and all the countries of the world had to pay us in gold, America was flush with gold. The problem was America spends on welfare and warfare. We started spending too much money and our gold supply got depleted. So that's why in 71, Nixon just says, oh, by the way, we closed the gold window. It means the dollar is no longer backed by gold. If you can understand that, and then it went to the petrodollar, a formal agreement by 1975. And again, the thing to understand here is that as long as oil is traded in dollars, America has hegemony. We have an unfair advantage throughout the world. That means China has to sell us cheap products so they can buy oil. Japan has to sell us cheap products so they can buy oil. Germany has to sell us their products so they can buy oil. But in 2000, old Saddam Hussein had the bright idea. He says, I'm tired of this. I'm going to, trade in euros because a euro was a new currency. It just came out. Naturally, Saddam is dead today. And then there was Gaddafi who said, I like that idea. I think I'll trade in dinars. Gaddafi is dead today. Now, if you can understand that, you understand world economic history, not that stuff they teach you in school. That's the real economics. If you don't play by the rules of the U.S. government trying to keep the U.S. dollar, the reserve currency of oil, you don't understand economics. The word CIA stands for Capitalism's Invisible Army. You don't play the game, you're taken out. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Hayward in Michigan. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He says, what are your suggestions for someone entering investment banking with one of the top financial institutions in the country in the midst of the impending 2016 crash?
I would say more power to you, wouldn't you say, Kim?
Yeah, that's a pretty gutsy move, I think.
Yeah, you have to be pretty smart to get hired, by those guys. They'll work you to death because you're a sister's son.
Yeah, my nephew took one of those jobs early as an intern, and they worked him to death. I mean, they worked him so many hours, and there was like 5 of these young men, and they worked and worked and worked, and the bosses got all the credit, and they got no credit, but they worked 18-hour days.
Yeah, and I saw this guy. He was just haggard. Young guy, 20-something years old, great college education and all that. He says, I never worked so hard. I said, well, it'll pay off for the rest of your life.
And that's what Andrew said. Andrew said, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to stick with this because I'm getting the best education possible.
Yeah, so congratulations. But also remember, there was a guy named David Stockman who wrote a book called The Great Deformation. He's been on our program. He was Reagan's budget director. But he also, I believe, it could be wrong, worked for Salomon Brothers. And working for the government and then working for Salomon Brothers is how he saw the whole scam coming apart. So that's why Stockman, who everybody, just idolizes Reagan, and most people think he's the greatest guy on earth. Reagan wasn't that great a president, but his reputation is because he played games with the banks who played the game. The point here is this: if you can get behind the scenes and see as much as you can, do it. Is what priceless education for you. For me, like I said, my college degree is ocean transportation, oil. I understand oil. And once I understood oil, I could see the world economy. And that's why the economics they teach you in school is a bunch of BS, blue sky. It has nothing to do with the real economy. So, Kim, let's close the show up. I think we've ruffled enough feathers.
I think we've ruffled a few feathers. You know, Bren asked an earlier question about, are they going to keep, propping the government up, propping the economy up and all of this, and how long is it going to go on? Don't you think that so many of these people coming out now, all of these experts that we talked to about, the impending petrodollar crash and the system crashing from all these from economics, isn't it because it should have crashed by now?
A long time ago.
Yeah. And now all these people are coming out. It should have crashed by now, but they keep propping it up so it doesn't crash. So I just think somewhere down the road, they're going to not be able to prop it up. And
that's why we have Matt Kirchhoff on, because he really doesn't believe it's propped up by quantitative easing. He disagrees with that. And that's why we have him on this program. So I'm not saying one is right or wrong. What I'm saying is listen to all points of view. There's more and more people coming onto the Rich Dad bandwagon. Remember in 1997 when Rich Dad was printed, I said your house is not an asset, savers are losers, and the rich don't work for money. I hope you're getting the message. If you're hanging on to your job, you're sending your kid to school, you're saving money and saving for retirement and getting out of debt and thinking your house is an asset, I hope you wake up and smell the coffee. So once again, I thank our guests, Matt Kirchhoff, Jerry Robinson. Matt's website is DowTheoryLetters.com. Jerry's is FTMDaily.com. You can submit your questions to AskRobert@RichDadRadio.com. And thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki. To learn more about the good news and bad news about money, go to RichDadRadio.com.
This has been a presentation of the Rich Dad Radio Network. Please subscribe to us on either iTunes or Android. And for more information, go to www.richdad.com.